I'm with David Ross Paterson. David is currently giving us several different characters in the Melbourne version of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. We can't tell you exactly which characters because we can't tell the secrets. But they're important characters in both parts of the show. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you very much for coming along today.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll have to start with Harry Potter, but you've got a very long and distinguished career behind you as well. And I want to talk about a lot of the other things that you've done.
Okay.
But let's start with Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how it came to you.
Was living out of the country, and my Australian agent sent me indication that they were interested in having a look at me, so I put something down on tape. And on the strength of that, I got a call back for auditions in Melbourne.
Yeah, it would be close to 2 years ago now.
I think early in 2018 was the callback, and then didn't hear anything, and pretty much assumed that was like so many opportunities that come and go, and then packing up the car to head over to Atlanta from LA, and got an email. We got the job. So I had headed back home. Yeah.
Wow. And you had a very long rehearsal period. Can you tell us about what was involved in the rehearsal? Because it's a very physical show, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of big company, and the creatives are the same people who created the show first in London, and then in New York, and Melbourne was the third production. And so that team pretty much came out and worked with the Australian cast, with Australian and New Zealand cast. Yeah, physically demanding. There was a lot of physical training that took place, and then we rehearsed the two shows down at Docklands. Never been better prepared for a show. I mean, we started mid-October, and then moved into the theatre in December, went into previews around mid-January, and then opened the show, I think it was the 23rd of February. We had a lot of Ks under the belt before we actually opened the show, so that's something that you don't always get.
Two shows, one runs on to the other.
Yeah.
When you were rehearsing, were you concentrating on show one, then doing show two, or were you going right through?
No, we went show one and got that to a point, and then show two. Right. Yeah.
So you're about 6 months or so in now. What's
more? Yeah.
More, yeah.
Well, given that we started previews in January, and here we are. So, but it's interesting because I've never done a long run, or a run as long as this anyway, before. So it's interesting territory.
So what's it like? What is it that's interesting about doing the long run for you?
You know, to keep it fresh and keep it alive, and stop it from becoming work a day. And really, that's not that hard when you've got 1,500 people turning up.
Very excited.
Very excited.
Yeah.
Every day, and of course with such a big cast, and then whether it's leave or people get ill or for whatever reason, you've got people coming in and covering roles, and that also keeps it fresh, and I think just everyone the necessity to stay with it in the moment, rather than just allowing it to become something that you just do.
I heard David Tennant, who David Tennant does a podcast with, and there was one, I can't remember who it was he was talking to, but whoever it was said he had been doing a long run and he suddenly came to on stage and didn't know what he'd been doing. He just completely had vagued out. And that must be a real gut fear that people have in doing long runs, that they'll kind of lose the plot.
Read and heard about things that people had experienced doing a long run, hallucinating, suddenly seeing people who weren't even there on stage, and and I think that might be more of a, in talking to people, I think that might be more of a hazard for performers rather than actors. I think as actors we're trained to be in the moment and to be here with the person now, and I think that's kind of preventative measure to stopping that zoning out, that whole kind of if you just relying on muscle memory, maybe that's when those spooky moments can happen. Having said that, I still managed to have a couple of moments where I have no idea where I am now. But that's when you switch back on.
So there must be some things that you do as an actor. We all know that listening is perhaps the primary skill that an actor has, and you can only do that effectively if you are totally in the moment. So how do you keep yourself in that actorly moment?
And just be present. Try to, and then when in the context of a long run, as I was saying earlier, we're lucky because we've got 2 shows to do, so that's a little bit more variety that we have to deal with, and just it sounds like I sound like a footballer, 1 week at a time, one scene at a time. We're going to take it one scene at a time, because if you start, just doing it 1 week at a time, or 1 day at a time, I think you can fall into that dream-like state.
How much does the audience help you with this?
That's part of the bonus of live theatre, isn't it? That you've got that instant feedback. You've got and of course with this show, you've got a full house pretty much every performance, and they love it. Quite a lot of them are there because they're Harry Potter fans, and so they're eating it up, and they're right there with you. So.
Is it different? Are the audiences different in show 1 to show 2?
I think they're surprised. I think they're because of the changes that are made, not just in the narrative, but in also in the staging and all the, I can't say exactly what happens, but there are a lot of surprises in terms of what happens, and I think they're delighted by that. And I think as we've gone through, and this is sort of taking it down another laneway, but I mean, as the audiences become more general public rather than just the real hardened Harry Potter heads who had to get in early and see it. I think now that we're I don't know if we've necessarily exhausted the Harry Potter aficionados, but it has to be a point where more GP come in. But the levels of enthusiasm don't seem to be waning, really. It's pretty astounding, really.
Well, it's a wonderful show, and we're amongst the diehards. I think we must have been in about week 2.
Right.
I think. So, and it was wonderful. It was extremely exciting, particularly the second night. What's going to happen tonight? And one of the things that was interesting for me, we were in exactly the same seats for part 1 and part 2, and at interval in part 2 I turned around to the person sitting next to me and sort of said, "Oh, now when were you in last?" And she said, "Oh, last night, and I was in this seat." And we hadn't noticed at all.
So you had the experience of seeing it on a Thursday and Friday?
Yes, we did Thursday and Friday night.
Because most people see it on the 2 show days, and that's I'm just wondering how that experience differs from coming from one night to the next and having that period to digest what you've just seen and anticipate what's coming up. Whereas it's a big day.
It is a big day
to see both shows on one day, but that's how most people see it.
You have a lot. It's a very big cast. A lot of very creative and wonderful performers there, and you're all doing the same thing every performance. So there must be, the creativity must shift to what's going on behind the scenes in some way.
Well, I mean, hopefully,
must bubble up.
I think the creativity is still happening on stage, and that's nice to observe. Even when you're not on stage, you know the tannoy's going and you're hearing and oh, that's different and that sounds different and oh, I wonder what they did this time, because there's a different audience reaction going on.
Nice.
But yeah, there's a whole other story that goes on backstage. It's pretty interesting, as you say. A lot of creative people, and we've got a few more than a few characters emerging, and rituals, little encounters and games and things that happen just to keep people interested. Yeah.
I remember Judi Dench talking about one show that she was in, where I think there was a prop that they passed between each other on the stage.
Right.
In a different way every night. Different people got it in a different part of the play. So there was all sorts of little things going on to just keep them all focused.
Yeah, there are a few little subplots going on backstage.
Nice.
Quite amusing. Yeah. And not necessarily just the cast. I mean, there's a whole crew back there.
Must be a big crew.
And there's hair and makeup and there are mechs and stagehands and wardrobe, of course, and fast changes. So there's a lot going on, a lot of people involved.
What's your favourite moment?
Oh, golly. It's difficult probably for me to say, because then I'll probably blow my cover. I have more to do in show 2. So probably just the beginning of show 2, and I know I'm really going to do some damage.
You're going to surprise.
Because show 1, I spent a lot of time just changing my pants, and show 1 just coming up and changing another costume, changing another costume. And,
While we're on theatre, perhaps you can tell us a bit about The Odd Couple that you did for MTC.
Oh, yes.
Which must have been a very different kind of experience.
It was a lot of fun. It was, I think it set new records for the MTC up until that time. A lot of fun with working with Peter Houghton always, and it was just a great cast. Sean and Francis, their teamwork was, I think, well suited to Felix and Oscar, and then.
I'm really interested in how that experience was similar or different to what you're doing now.
Although the creative team was very much in terms of Harry Potter was wanting you to own everything and to bring your own creativity. They'd created the show twice before, and they kind of know what they want. And although there is still room for creativity, it's creativity within parameters that they establish, you know,
and that are already the franchise too. You are looking for specific elements in any of the characters.
That's okay. That's good. I mean, even because we know that some of the most creative, say, poetry is written within a set of guidelines that you have to adhere to anyway. You know, and sometimes those boundaries or expectations or limitations actually foster tremendous creativity. But of course with The Odd Couple, it had been done before, and it was a hugely successful film, and it was a hugely successful TV series, so there were certain audience expectations, but it was kind of being fresh minted as well. And
you would have had quite a different kind of rehearsal experience, I would think, in that. So
well, yeah, I mean, pretty much the norm in terms of, you know, commercial theatre. You know, you're roughly 4 weeks, and you're up, and then you're doing a dress, and then you're doing a preview, and maybe a couple of previews, and then you're on. Whereas this one, we previewed for over more than a month. You know, multiple shows a week. And
were things changing during that period?
Everything was set. The script was set. There weren't additions or subtractions. It was basically just getting it right. There's so much technical and timing and, you know, special effects and tricks that are done in the show that there's always things to be worked on and refined. But so yeah, I mean, yeah, as I said before, I've never felt better prepared. Nowhere near as daunting as most openings can be.
Shifting now to independent theatre, which you've also done quite a lot of, and you've worked with Peter Blackburn, who's been a guest on Tête-à-tête as well.
All right.
And you worked with Peter both here in Australia and in Los Angeles. So how did you come to meet Peter?
The Australian Theatre Company, based in LA, and they do terrific work. They've had several productions. They do clearly Australian work, but also they do readings and they encourage writers, and they have fellowships and scholarships and things going on as well. So they're quite ambitious, and they do it for the right reason. And they were doing a production of Reuben Guthrie, and they organised for Pete to direct it, and he cast me, they cast me in the show, playing the dad.
And how did you then come to Melbourne to do Stupid Fucking Bird?
Well, Pete spoke about the possibility of doing a show in Melbourne, and but nothing was certain at that stage. And then time goes by, and I was moving backwards and forwards a little bit between Melbourne and the US, and it just happened that when he signed on with the Lightning Jar guys who were doing the show, and Pete asked me if I was interested in auditioning, and I did, and was lucky enough to get cast, and that was another great experience. I've enjoyed working with Pete and the people that Pete works with.
And that was a great performance. Thank you for that. It was really really good. Yeah, thank you.
Fun.
We've talked a lot about live theatre. Let's move now on to some of the other things that you've done, and the curious case of Benjamin Button comes to mind.
Right.
Tell me about the experience of being on that big blockbuster.
I don't know how I got cast in that. Anyway, I did, and it was fun. It was, I didn't have a lot to do, but I got to hang out on set with Tilda Swinton and Brad Pitt for a couple of days, and got to watch David Fincher work with his crew and make how they make a movie. And
what did you learn from that experience?
Some people do a lot of takes.
Okay.
And he does. He's just a guy who just shoots the hell out of it, and without a lot of direction, really, or a lot of. There was direction, but not that he was necessarily dissatisfied with what was going on. I guess he just wanted to see what would happen. If you just keep shooting this thing and shooting it, and so I'd never experienced that many takes before.
How would you describe the difference between working in LA and working in Melbourne or Australia? Because you've also been on some big pictures in Australia.
I don't think there's it's pretty much the same mechanics, the same kind of ingredients involved. You're basically getting people together, and hopefully it's a good group, and you've got the right people together, and you let them go. And see what happens.
So more about the individual director and their particular approach than the overall structure.
I've been lucky, really. I think in terms of the people that I've worked with, that they seem everyone's been pretty respectful in terms of letting people do their jobs. I remember Aidan Fennessy said this to me on a short that we did. He said a big part of the director's job is just maintaining a rhythm that assists everyone to do their best job. And I think that's what good directors do. They create a comfortable environment where there aren't too many big surprises and people can do their work.
A number of the people that I've interviewed have been through acting school, whether it's here in Melbourne or in Perth or whatever. Where did you train?
Well, going back, I was a drama major at Teachers College back in Geelong. A guy called Ken Hemmons, who ran the Geelong Teachers College as it was when I first started, became State College of Victoria at Geelong and then something else. Anyway, Ken was terrific, and I mean, I was doing drama because there was 12 girls and 3 guys, and I looked at the PE students and they'd be doing biomechanics and goodness knows what. And I mean, it was a teacher training program. It wasn't a drama, or it wasn't a, and they were doing all this work. And I looked at the drama students. They're having long counter lunches, and I thought, this is the track for me. So that's where I started. But then I went off and taught and didn't really pursue it. But it nibbled away in the background. And then I started, when I came down to Melbourne, I was teaching up in the bush, and then I came down to Melbourne and started doing classes at Playbox.
Oh, could have been.
Yeah, it was like Michael Gurr. I did a class with Michael Gurr. And then there was Paran Tafe had the showbiz class with Margot Knight. I did a class with Margot, and I thought, this is fun. I did a couple of amateur shows, and then they said, you should go to school. And I said, where? And they said, VCA or Knight. No, I can't go and do a 3-year program somewhere. And then someone suggested, well, you go to New York. Ran away from teaching and went off and trained in New York and studied with Uta Hagen and did that for a year. Carol Rosenfeld, I think, has been over here.
Yes, she has. I've done work with Carol.
And it was just one. I mean, it was like, wow, so this is what it's all about. And then more I knew, the less I knew. And so then I signed up to do a 2-year full-time program at a school called New Actors Workshop in New York. And working with, drop some names, Mike Nichols and George Morrison and Paul Sills. Paul Sills is Viola Spolin's son. So the guy started Second City basically, and Compass in Chicago. And so thinking, working with all these people, and this is what you do it. Oh no, this is how you do it. This is how you. But I think the thing was that school, that New Actors Workshop, the 3 people were friends that started the school, but they weren't necessarily coming at it from the same angle. Like George was kind of a methody kind of director guy. Mike Nichols is just like a storyteller, filmmaker, genius guy, and Paul Sills is the improvisation guy. So they're all coming from different angles, not necessarily preaching the same thing, which a lot of schools do. A lot of schools say you've got to do it this way. As I've worked as an actor or hopefully developed as an actor, I don't know what. I don't think there's any approaches that you have to do. Yeah. I think one of the primary functions that acting schools deliver is giving people an opportunity to get out and perform and build up their frequent flyer hours, on stage, or in front of a camera, or whatever it is.
It seems to me, the more I do too, is that you pick things that work for particular parts.
Maybe, yeah.
I think, and I also think there are some things that are your baseline, your starting point, and then you kind of go anywhere from there. Right. That's been the experience I've had.
Yeah. Knowing your lines helps.
Yeah, it really helps. Yeah.
Helps you and helps everyone else.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And I guess you do pick up a bit of a bag of tricks as you go along. Yeah.
What are the things that you like to do? What do you like to do before a performance to warm up, get yourself ready? I
think relaxation's pretty important. I think it's everything really. It certainly has been in the people I've admired. It was so hard for me to relax. It was I was so terrified by the whole thing. I don't know why I wanted to do it. I don't know. I was just putting myself through such a horrible bloody ordeal, and it was terrifying. And yet for some reason I wanted to keep exposing myself to that. And the people that I would see who were really good, I just marvel at their level of relaxation. And I think, geez, one of these days. I'm still trying.
One other thing I really wanted to ask you about was the experience of touring around Australia, because you've done a couple of quite big tours with a wonderful play reserved seating.
Yes.
So tell me about what it was like to do that big long tour.
You know, you're getting paid to travel around and see the country and do something you love and bring a show to people who are, by and large, really, really grateful that you're bringing a show to their town. Yeah. So lovely. I love regional touring. It's pity that the market seems to have dropped away a fair bit. It's not the same touring scene as there used to be.
Oh, really?
It's still there, but it's a lot harder now. You have to do a lot of work to stitch together a viable tour.
So what you did was you went through the long paddock, didn't you, and created your own tour?
When we first did it back in the good old days, we took it to Long Paddock, and then independent theatre makers would take things along, like myself, and then someone would pick you up and take you under their wing, and so Regional Arts Victoria, or in combination with maybe other state bodies, would put together a big tour. But now it seems that it's up to the individual to do a lot of that grunt work now.
What advice would you give to someone who might be interested in putting together a tour like you did with reserved seating?
I would say I would encourage, particularly young actors, people who are graduating, coming. Or you don't have to have gone to a drama school, but for young actors looking to, the best thing is to create your own work. Is to whether it's using all this technology that it's around now. It's so accessible. You can shoot stuff. You can make your own stuff, and that obviously you can make theatre as well. And I would encourage anyone to get together with like-minded people and create their own work, because if you're going to sit around and wait for the phone to ring with your agent, which it's well, one, if you're lucky enough to get an agent, but doesn't mean they're going to get your work. Yep. And we know that there's not a great deal of work going on in this country at the moment. That's why so many people go overseas. Yeah, then research, and so get a vehicle that you think people will want to see. That's the other thing. And then just research and find out what are the other showcases that I can take this show to, and allow potential producers to see it. But once you start producing things, if you're producing theatre, you're going to be talking to people who also do it, and you'll be learning about what the next step is and who you need to talk to and what you need to do.
In terms of reserved seating, which you took around a couple of times, the first tour particularly was a very big tour around right up the west coast of Australia and across the top and so on.
Yeah.
What are some of the memorable moments from that tour?
We were in Tasmania. We did a number of Queenstown, Tasmania. Yeah. Nothing grows there. No vegetation in the whole town, because it was I think it was copper mining.
Yeah, it's mining. Yeah.
And it's just denuded the entire town. So that was pretty. And then I can't remember the name of the town, but it was so cold in this public hall, because we did everything from big theatres down to footy club rooms with this show.
Wow.
And it was so cold at one venue. I remember having my hands in a toaster oven. That was my warm up to go on stage, because I had no feeling in my hands. And these people in Exmouth, it was outdoor theatre, and it was balmy, beautiful, warm weather, wonderful. But the constant sound of cans being opened, and then after the show you meet the people who come, and they loved it. They loved the show, but I've never encountered a group of people who were so drunk and yet so articulate at the same time. They'd be regaling us with their take on the show, and they'd be swaying, but still talking. Something in the weather up there, something in the beer up there. I don't know. It was pretty amazing. Yeah.
So you would have had there were two of you in the performance,
Yeah.
and two people with you.
Generally, one or two people. Yeah, we had two
one
handlers.
or two techies.
Yeah, stage manager and a tour manager usually.
So they would go and set up for you and stuff, or were you also doing that?
More often than not, because we were travelling pretty light, we wouldn't have a lot to set up.
Yes.
And a lot of it was just focusing lights and getting the sound organised, and so there generally wasn't a lot to construct or erect, but we give a hand. But by and large, they'd take care of that. Plus, there'd be the local crew that would also hop in and help there, and and then we'd come in and do the sound check and whatever, and get ready and do the show and help them pack up afterwards.
You've mentioned that you are almost based in two countries. You have a base in America, and you have a base out here. What's it like? How do you manage that two country thing?
I think the main thing is just being where you are when you're there.
So where's home?
I think Australia's always going to be, ultimately it's going to be home. Yeah. You know, hence the staying up to 2 o'clock in the morning to listen to the footy or something like that over there. Yeah.
What's been your favourite piece that you've worked on TV?
Because I've never had a real long run on TV. I've always been pretty much, like a guestie. Probably the longest one I had was like a 5 or 6 weeks on Neighbours or something like that. Being a guest actor, TV show, is the hardest job in acting.
I'm so glad you said that. I totally agree with you. It's incredibly hard.
Because you've got this machine that's up and running, and everyone's very familiar with each other, and they know how they work, and they're comfortable, and there's a pretty tight schedule too, and you have to come into this kind of machine that's already up and running and jump on, do your bit, support basically the storylines that are around the series regulars, and then jump off. And you just don't want to stuff up. More often than not, it's the guesties who bring the spice to the storylines, and you come on and you stir things up a bit, So that can be fun.
But you're right, it's extremely hard because you don't have time to find your rhythm and your feet.
And that's why, and that's where you really, it's so nice when the people who are the series regulars, and particularly those ones who go out of their way to make you feel comfortable.
Yes, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
And not just the cast, but also the applies to the crew too.
You mentioned Neighbours before. I certainly had that experience on Neighbours.
Right, yeah.
They were extremely welcoming, and it made it a lot easier than some others have been.
And they've been doing it for so long, and they're used to seeing this sort of passing parade of everyone has to go to Neighbours sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's a very precarious life, and we all know it's a very precarious life. Why do you stay with it?
I don't know. Maybe because I don't think I can do anything else.
Yes, you can.
There's something to be said for attrition. There's something to be said for stubbornness. If you can do it long enough, you got to get some work, because other people have dropped out and gone by the wayside. But why do I don't know. I guess once I decided I really wanted to do it, it took me a long time to commit to doing it. I had a whole other career. I was a school teacher for a number of years, and so I dabbled and kind of danced around the whole idea of it for a long time, because I think it terrified me. And then once I'd made the commitment, I was in. You get paid for the waiting and the sitting around and the whatever else other hoops you have to jump through, but the acting you do for free, because that's the good part. That's the fun part. The longer I do it, the less I know about it in terms of what acting is and why we do it and how we do it. I don't know.
What do you think the role of an actor is in society?
Probably not as profound as some actors think their role is. They're storytellers, because we need stories, basic human need, and help people make sense of things.
David, a lot of your work that I've seen has been comedy, and I know you've written quite a lot of comedy. Why aren't you doing more comedy?
Been pretty busy doing this show the last year or so.
And will continue to be for a while.
Yeah. It's interesting you should ask that, because I've been thinking I've got to start doing something else as well as doing this show. Now that this is it's to a point now where we're kind of we're in a rhythm. I can get my head up and see what else I can do. So, without necessarily having a firm idea about what I want to do, I know I want to do something. And just actually, it's funny you asked about the comedy. The last couple of days I've been thinking about maybe writing something hilarious.
Well, David, it's lovely to have you back in Australia.
Well, it's lovely to be back.
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon on Tête-à-Tête.
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks for having me.
I've been with David Ross Paterson. Thank you for watching.